Well, hundreds of Australians will attend services in Bali to mark the 7th anniversary of the deadly nightclub bombings. A memorial service was held at the Australian Consulate for survivors and relatives of those who died in the October 12 attacks. 88 Australians were among 202 people killed after bombs were detonated in the Sari Club and Paddy's Bar at Kuta. It's the first service since 3 Islamic militants who carried out the attacks were executed in November last year. Well, joining us on the line now is Professor Mark Creamer, who's the Director of the Australian Centre for Post-Traumatic Mental Health at the University of Melbourne. Well, Professor Creamer, thank you for joining us this afternoon.
It's a pleasure, Jacinta.
What we're interested in, it may be 7 years on since the Bali bombings, but of course, not everyone is going to have moved on from it. And that's what we assume if we're not involved, don't we?
That's right. We do tend to assume that people recover. It's 7 years down the track now, surely people are over it. And the reality is that I think the vast majority of people will have recovered very well. Human beings are resilient, and with the benefit of support from family and friends, most are able to recover and to return to a good quality of life, which of course doesn't mean that they're not still distressed by the memories. Of course they are. These are terrible memories of a horrific event, but that it's no longer interfering significantly with their lives or their quality of life. Having said that, of course, there will be a minority who are not recovering quite so well, and even this far down the track may be continuing to experience some significant mental health problems as a result.
And the way to recover, I assume, is to get counselling.
Well, I think for those people who need it, absolutely. I think for those who are not showing a normal kind of recovery, then professional help is available. And we've learnt a lot in recent years about what treatments work and what the best evidence-based interventions are. So, yes, absolutely. If people are still having problems, then finding a mental health provider who specialises in trauma and can provide the best kind of evidence-based treatment is exactly the way to go.
Are we better prepared these days as a nation, as a society, to deal with this kind of trauma? Do we have more services? Is it more acceptable?
Yeah, look, I think we are better prepared. I think that, there will always be a way to go. These are very, very difficult events for individuals and groups and communities to come to terms with. But I do think with each tragedy we learn more, and there's now a much better understanding of trauma, I think, particularly among health providers, our general practitioners and our mental health providers, better understanding about what to ask, about how to recognise these problems and about how to intervene with them. We now have national guidelines actually that we developed with NH and MRC a couple of years ago. So there's now a kind of a standard to which we can aspire. But I think the difficulty is that every disaster is different, and Bali was quite unique in many ways. It was offshore and it created a whole range of specific problems for us, and I think every disaster has its unique aspects, and we need to adjust our general principles to deal with the specific needs of that one.
Is there still a stigma attached to seeking counselling? Are people worried that they'll be seen as, say, weak if they seek help?
Yeah, I think there is. I think we're much better than we were, and we need to recognise that. But I think certainly for some groups there is still a stigma, and of course men are particularly bad, and certain groups of men, I think, that come from a culture that suggests that we should be tough and strong and macho, and this shouldn't affect me. And it can be really difficult for them to admit to themselves, let alone admit to others, that they're not coping too well. So I would just certainly strongly encourage people, even the toughest people are going to be affected by these events from time to time, and it is no insult at all to stick your hand up and ask for help if you need it.
Obviously we're talking in the context today of the Bali bombings 7 years on, but it's not just people who are directly affected, I would imagine, by a tragedy like this, who've lost loved ones, but it's the rest of us who maybe are traumatised by just seeing the pictures or hearing what's gone on.
Well, certainly I think there are ripple effects, and as you say, an event like this affects the whole community to a certain extent. But I do think, again, let's keep remembering that human beings are very resilient, and although we will, all of us, I think, be distressed by these reminders and seeing the images, most of us, they won't affect us in any long-term negative, detrimental kind of way. So we certainly don't want to create problems where there are none. We need to recognise what is normal, healthy human distress, but that this will pass, and of course people will get on with their lives as before.
All right, Professor Mark Creamer, we thank you for your time this afternoon.
It's a great pleasure. Thank you.